The Cu Chi tunnels are renowned as an extensive, hand-carved underground network near Ho Chi Minh City used by the Viet Cong during the Vietnam War. They served as vital living quarters, hospitals, supply routes, and bases for surprise guerrilla attacks, symbolizing Vietnamese resilience and functioning as a major, preserved war memorial tourism site today. If you ever find yourself on the road to Vietnam's historic Cu Chi tunnels, there is a stop you absolutely cannot miss. Tucked away in Ho Chi Minh City's Hac Man district is Lamphat Company, also known as Sun Mai Lamphat. From the outside it looks like a beautiful showroom, but inside, it's a bustling social enterprise that changes lives. Here, a collective of differently abled artisans, many of them generational victims or Agent Orange, keeps an ancient Vietnamese art form alive. Lamphat Company Sun Mai Lamphat, in Ho Chi Minh City, is a social enterprise where differently abled artisans create intricate lacquerware using eggshells, shells, and wood. The workshop offers visitors a chance to see the meticulous production process, with proceeds supporting both the artisans and victims or Agent Orange. For a behind-the-scenes look at this community-driven artistry, a visit to the Ho Chi Minh City location is required. It is often arranged by local guides, as the company does not operate a global e-commerce site. They specialize in Sun Mai traditional Vietnamese lacquerware. Now this isn't just painting on wood, it is a grueling 15 to 20 stage battle against time that takes anywhere from 50 to over 100 days per piece. It all begins with the core, usually jackfruit wood or MDF. The artisans wrap it tightly in fine cotton gauze and seal it with a thick paste of natural tree resin, sawdust, and crushed rock. This creates a flexible skin so the wood never warps or cracks. They dry it in a dark, humid room, submerge it in water, and sand it completely flat. And they repeat this cycle up to 5 times before a single drop of color even touches the board. This is where the magic happens. Because natural lacquer doesn't have a true, bright white pigment, these artists use a mind-blowing alternative: broken duck eggshells. Watch how they use tweezers to meticulously place tiny shell shards into wet resin, tapping them down to create a crackled, mosaic pattern for clouds or blossoms. They also carve paper-thin wafers of mother-of-pearl and oyster shells to catch the light, and even float real gold leaf onto the canvas to create a luxurious depth glow. Once the design is finished, they completely bury it under layers of dark, opaque varnish. It looks ruined, but in Sanwa, you paint in reverse. The artisans must wet sand away the top layers by pure feel under running water, carefully grinding down just enough to reveal the hidden art underneath. Finally, using a mix of charcoal powder, ash, and the bare palms of their hands, they polish it to a brilliant mirror finish. Every single piece in this showroom represents months of human patience, resilience, and unyielding talent. While Lamphat doesn't run a global online store, stopping here and buying directly from them supports these incredible artists and funds vital rehabilitation programs. It is art with a soul. Just 40 miles northwest of Ho Chi Minh City lies a quiet forest. Today it feels peaceful, but 50 years ago, this ground was the focal point of the Vietnam War. Welcome to the Cu Chi tunnels. This massive underground labyrinth stretches over 150 miles. Vietnamese fighters hand-dug the entire network using nothing but small hoes and wicker baskets. Today we are going deep inside to see how they lived, fought, and survived. This wasn't just a series of crude trenches. It was an interconnected, multi-level underground citadel. The tunnels were carved into hard clay that cured naturally like concrete. The first level sat just 10 feet down, housing command posts, kitchens, and medical bays. The second level reached 20 feet deep for sleeping quarters. The third level plunged 30 feet down, acting as bomb shelters against heavy artillery. Air was drawn through fake termite mounds on the surface, angled to block out gas and rain. For thousands of people, this dark underworld was home. The air was thick, hot, and suffocatingly humid. Malaria, scorpions, and parasites were constant threats. Yet, life persisted. Teachers taught children by candlelight. Even kitchens operated underground. The famous Wang Cam stoves dispersed cooking smoke through long subterranean flues. By the time it reached the surface, it appeared as harmless morning mist, keeping their location a complete secret. To protect the network, the jungle floor was turned into a deadly minefield of low-tech booby traps. Most were built from recycled metal and unexploded ordnance. Mechanisms like the punji stick or seesaw trap weren't meant to kill instantly. They were engineered to wound. This forced enemy squads to carry their comrades, effectively draining morale and slowing down operations. It created a constant state of psychological anxiety for anyone stepping off the beaten jungle paths. Now let's step inside. These public sections have been widened by 30% for international tourists. Even so, the moment you drop down, the atmosphere shifts. The space is incredibly tight. You have to hunch, duck walk, or crawl on your hands and knees. The air feels heavy and warm. Realizing that the original fighters navigated these corridors in pitch darkness while carrying heavy gear forces you to respect the sheer human endurance required to survive down here. Emerging back into the sunlight, you are met with a jarring, auditory reminder of the past. The site features an active sport firing range. For a small fee, visitors can test actual wartime rifles, like the M16, or the AK-47. Hearing these thunderous cracks echo off the trees gives you a sudden terrifying sense of the sheer noise and scale of the battles that once tore through this very forest. Leaving the gunfire behind, the tour ends at a quiet memorial. Kochi is a place of profound dualities. It stands as a monument to the devastating realities of war but also to human resourcefulness and resilience. Visiting isn't just about exploring tunnels, it's about standing where history was written, walking away with a deeper appreciation for peace. Thank you for watching. Hit like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts below. Until next time, keep exploring.